Hey, sneak peekers. It's Allie, and then here's Sydney, and we are both so excited today. We are talking to the music supervisor for the iconic series that Sydney and I absolutely love, the Buccaneers. We are so excited to talk to Matt Biffa. He is the music supervisor, and it was just such a wonderful conversation. I can't wait for you to watch it. So, without further ado, let's go watch. So, we're actually a part of a student TV show at the University of Texas. We're both graduating
Yeah.
pretty but we make a lot of content about entertainment news and shows like this. We covered a lot about the Buccaneers. Sydney and I were both such big fans. Um, so
Thank
I
you.
yes, I think our listeners would love to just hear kind of like what your job on the show entailed and maybe how you found your way into this like career choice you have because it is such a fun one that we don't get to hear a lot about at school. So we really want to learn about
Oh,
it. Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you very much. So, well, should we start? We'll start with the career first, and then get on to Buccaneers second.
Yeah.
Then, if that's all right.
Yes, of course.
Um, I mean, I've been doing this a minute. I started, I think. Well, nobody quite knows. It was either 1995 or 1996, so
Okay.
it was definitely a while ago. And I got into it by accident. Truth be told. I just wanted to work in the music business. And I was working at the time on a landfill site driving a dumper truck. I was probably 20, 25, 26, I think, very unhappy. And I quit that job and then answered an ad for receptionist needed for busy music production company. That was Airedale, where I still work. And I realized afterwards that they were really legit. Like they'd just done like The Lion King, they'd done Gladiator. Um, and so I was there answering the phones, making tea, making coffee until I started finding, I sort of cut my teeth finding songs for commercials. That's how I sort of started. Um, Back then we worked on cassette. You might know what you might not know what cassette is, but I used to have a pencil and rock and roll the cassette back
Oh,
and forth to try and cue the song to the VHS
yeah.
that I was also pressing play on. So it was very untechnical, but it was that. So that was how I learned to put music to picture, really. Um, and then, like I say, I've been doing it a long old time, and been lucky enough to do some sort of pretty decent stuff. So um, I I accidentally have the skills to be reasonably good at music supervision. Um, I'm profoundly ADHD, and so what that means is that what I've realized is that I'm really good at multitasking, which is something that you need to do with music supervision because everything is on fire all the time. There's always issues that need to be sort of sorted out. And the other thing is that because of the way that my brain works, my memory is very, very good, freakishly good for weird musical facts and and obscure songs and stuff like that. And I can't remember what I did 2 hours ago, or yesterday or anything like that. And that's just so really it was a really fortuitous series of events that led me to becoming a music supervisor with sort of skills that I accidentally happened to have that have sort of served me well over all these years. And there's all sorts of other stuff that we can talk about. I'm sure we'll get into that further down the way. But then in terms of like Buccaneers, they came to me whenever it was, and they sort of gave me a brief overview of the show. And they sent me the first couple of scripts, and they were like, and really what their question was sort of like, how do we make this different to Bridgerton,
Yeah.
right? Because I think the 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 comparison was always going to be Bridgerton, and so I read the first two scripts, and then my initial idea was that what we would do is that we would do no cover versions, no licensing, and we would only write brand new songs based on the entire history of American music. You know, like, so going back to like Robert Johnson, you know, all the way sort of through like, so like a love letter to American music, basically, with only female artists, American female artists, to kind of highlight the culture clash. Because as you know, the show is all about the clash between the Brits and our girls, you know. So I sort of quite gingerly told that to, I had a meeting with the Susanna, the director, the Block One director, and the folks at the Forge and Apple. And I was expecting them to tell me not to be an idiot and go away, you know, sort of like come back with something serious. But instead they said, oh yeah, no, yeah, that's great. Go away and make it happen. And so then I was like, pardon my language, oh shit, you know, now I have to make it real. Now, as you know, as the show went on, what happens with the show is that as you kind of get into it, it starts telling you what it wants. And so it became clear that what it needed was something a bit more contemporary and a bit younger. So, for example, originally, like I did have like Mavis Staples lined up, who was going to write a song for us. You know, and I actually felt that, well, you know, if we're going to do this kind of history of American music thing, then we may as well start with her, you know, and do a kind of Sister Rosetta Tharpe type kind of thing, you know. But it became quite apparent that the show wasn't really asking for that. And so it kind of gently morphed into what it is now, or what it became, you know. But that was certainly and then also I think the thing to say is that we obviously did end up licensing some songs, and the reason for that, apart from anything else, is because the producers were just like in a state of constant terror, because it would be like, well, what song's going to go here? And I'd be like, well, I don't know, because, you know, we're going to write it. And that is a very nervous place for producers to be when they need to like show, you know, you need to send the show out to various people to sort of get story notes and stuff like that. And so without score and, you know, sort of songs and stuff like that, it becomes difficult for people to imagine, you know. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I totally like what you said, because you kind of took the thought out of our heads. One of our questions was, you know, how, like, what was the decision process to go from, you know, Bridgerton does like those instrumental covers. And then what I liked about the Buccaneers was, yeah, when you guys did license songs, it was it was just the original song. Like, for instance, when you had a Taylor Swift song in there or
Yeah.
that. And so, like, you fully read our mind with that one question. And I really like hearing just the process of coming up with these questions, or coming up with like what song is going to fit each scene, because that is like has such a powerful part of it. But thank you so much, Sydney. Would you like to get in there with a question?
Yeah, kind of building off of that, when you're looking for these different artists, what kind of aesthetic, like sounds and styles, were you really trying to build on for this project?
So the thing, what we were sort of always trying to do was to kind of have like a real consistency, try and have consistency between the original songs that we produced. And I think I want to say there were like 15 of those eventually, which is still a good number of original songs that Stella Mosgawa from Warpaint produced. And those, and then the songs that we sort of licensed. And you mentioned that Taylor Swift song. That was actually the first song that made me sort of think, oh, okay, actually, we probably can license stuff here, because that that scene was originally going to be scores, and for the longest time it was scores. And then I was walking the dog one day, and I had been talking to Taylor's brother Austin about the possibility of, because I was like, well, like we'll try and start big, right? So it was originally sort of the possibility of having her write something for the show, or let us have a look at maybe some unreleased stuff. And so in doing that, I was listening to a lot of her stuff, and then Nothing New popped on, and I was suddenly like, oh, that would be killer for that scene. And I rang up Beth, the producer, and said, like, I have a controversial suggestion, which they always get very scared about. And we tried it, and then Beth and Catherine, the scriptwriter slash showrunner, sort of burst into tears. And that made me sort of think. So originally I was like, well, okay, well, so now we found the song, so now I've got to write, we've got to get something written that kind of does the same thing. And then I was like, why am I making my life so much harder than it needs to be when we can just like license this song and it kind of is perfect. So that from that moment forth, I was sort of like, oh, okay, I think we probably can license stuff. But, like I say, there's a certain sort of tone, I suppose, across the whole thing where it sort of tends to be like, live instruments mainly, not a lot of, it's not very synthetic, and then a lot of the, and then, what Stella was doing as well was sort of working in the same studios, in the same rooms, so that the instruments are always sound the same. The musicians changed a bit. The other thing, by the way, as well, in the original idea was that not only were we only going to write new songs, but also we were going to create like these little super groups, so that like you could have like Sheila E as your drummer, with like Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth on bass, and Carrie Brownstein from Sleater Kinney would be your guitarist, and all this kind of stuff. And so there was a bit of that kind of went on, different bass players and what have you, but always with a view to just kind of keeping a consistency of sound and tone, basically, if that makes sense.
100%.
We loved the finale when we watched it together. I remember we both like jumped out of our seats when Long Live started playing, because that was a song we both knew growing up, and it
Right.
to be a powerful, like, kind of girl power moment of them running away. It was such an awesome scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also just we'd love to know, were there any songs maybe that, if you were licensing any, that you really wanted that maybe didn't get to make it in, or some that you felt like you kind of had to fight for at all?
I was really obsessed with getting Wise Blood's Children of the Empire in, and we couldn't find the right spot for it.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to jinx anything, but I mean, I would definitely, I'm definitely going to keep an ear out for it for season 2, because there's something about the lyric that sort of felt quite pertinent, and certainly it was sort of right for the sound of things as well. The other thing was that, I mean, that last thing, Long Live at the end, it was not uncontroversial, that little bit, because for the longest time, actually, that was Tempt with that ABCDEFU song, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And which I fervently disliked.
Okay.
And the producers absolutely loved. And I remember when we were spotting that thing, I had my stepson who was 12 at the time, and he was sort of sitting playing a video game quietly, and we were watching the episode, and then that ABCDEFU song came
Oh
on,
my
and then my
gosh.
stepson looked up at me and just went,
Oh my gosh.
you know,
Yeah.
I agree. I
I,
think,
and
yeah.
I was just sort of so that was difficult. And actually, I will say for the longest time that I'd planned. There was Nile Rodgers was on board to write a song, and we were trying to get him to write something there with Brittany Howard, but we just couldn't get the stars to align. We could not get the timings to work and anything like that. So it didn't come off, unfortunately. But I then heard All American Bitch by Olivia Rodrigo, which obviously ended up being in the trailer. And actually, that was probably, with hindsight, it was probably the right place for it. But I really wanted it to be the last song of the show.
Yeah. I
Sometimes you disagree, you sort of respectfully disagree. And yeah.
I think that's such an interesting part of it because like going back when you were saying, for the finale with the song that your stepson didn't want in it, like imagining it with that song, it just like I can't imagine it, like you were saying. And I think you did the right choice to kind of fight for something else because it was so like it just like that part made me just want to start the episode over and like rewatch it and relive it all again. It was just such an
Oh,
awesome.
okay.
Yeah. So I really like just high praises. I thought it was so amazing. All
Thank you.
like it was awesome.
Yeah, and
Thanks. Well, you can thank Beth and Catherine really,
yeah,
because they were the ones that fought very hard for that.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, thank you so much. Sydney, do you want to go ahead and close this out for us?
Yeah, well, we're actually students, as we said at the beginning, at the University of Texas, and a lot of
Yeah.
our viewers are also students. And so we were wondering if you had any advice for students looking to get either into the film or like maybe into the music supervision kind of space.
Yes. Just well, I can give you some roundabout
Yeah.
nebulous advice, and then we can get into kind of like some slight specifics of how you do it.
Yeah,
I would say so. Like I would say that like particularly for music supervision, but for I think for everything in life, for everything in life, is like being able to communicate clearly and respectfully, and is really important. And particularly, so like for example, with music supervision, generally speaking, the scenario that you always find yourself in is that you are trying to sort of persuade someone that doesn't really give a shit to let you use a piece of music that is very personal to them, or was maybe written by their grandfather or their father, or them, for a show that they might not really be into for less money than they would like. Okay, so it's like basically all the odds are kind of stacked against you, really. I would refer back to like shows that when I used to do like sex education, for example, that show was an absolute nightmare to sort of clear songs for, because people very often sort of misunderstood what it was supposed to be, and they were just sort of like, I've got to tell you, it sounds kind of pornographic, and it's not for me. So I would say that sort of, like I say, like clear, respectful communication works for everything in life. Never ask anybody to do something that you haven't done yourself and wouldn't do yourself. The thing about like, you never know who's coming up when you're on the way down, I think holds very true. So, always remember that really annoying person that you sort of want to tell to F off you know, in 6 years' time might be, you know, like the head of music at Netflix or something like that, you know. Practically speaking, some of the ways into getting into music supervision are work, you know, try and intern for the film and TV company, as the film and TV departments at record companies, publishers, sync agents, stuff like that, because you're always, if you're working in those departments, you're in contact with music supervisors every day. And we do notice when someone is like on the money, so to speak, you know, just that little bit more efficient, you know, like the ideas are just a little bit better, maybe. When I started working, I mean, like for years I worked on my own. I did everything on my own, all the clearance requests, all the licensing, everything. And then I started working with Kira Elwis, who I still do work with, but she's here in LA now. But she sort of started working with me when I started The End of the Fucking World. And what would happen is that I would come in and I would sort of say, right, okay, like such and such a song, where are we with that? She's like, I chased it up this morning. And I was like, okay, right, what did Graham Coxon say about that meeting? And she was like, I spoke to him yesterday, like, he's all good. And I'd be like, pardon my language, like, fucking hell, like, this is amazing. Like, you know, like, she was always one step ahead. So I would also say that sort of like on a practical level, what you always want to be doing, and again, this goes for everything, not just music supervision, you always just want to be making somebody's life easier, right? And that means just kind of like being ahead of the game, just kind of taking the time out to sort of say, right, what's coming up? What don't we have in place here? What can I do to just sort of chase this up? What is the worst thing that can happen if I don't chase it up versus the worst thing that can happen if I do? And with music supervision as well, what we are sort of there for is to make the director's life easier, the producer's lives easier, and to kind of navigate through the slightly dark art of music, of the creative work, and then the clearance and the negotiations and all that kind of stuff. And it is a sort of dark art. So I would, that might be a bit vague, I suppose, but I mean that you know, and just be nice, basically. Always say please, always say thank you. You know, like don't get too big for your boots for anything.
Yeah.
You know, and try not to get too anxious.
Yeah.
About life.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know that sounds incredibly trite, but do you know what I mean, though?
We're graduating in a couple days, so we like that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You know, I mean, what I will say is that, you know, like the economics of music supervision are, you know, like if you want like a mansion in the Bahamas and a super yacht and, you know, a place in Malibu or whatever, like music supervision ain't the career for you, you know. So because the economics are such that you always have to do a lot of jobs all at the same time, and that can weigh heavy on the old mental health, you know. Like it's very stressful.
Yeah.
And so when I was younger, I used to maybe sort of take all of that too personally and not give myself enough time off and stuff like that. So I would say that definitely, with the benefit of hindsight, you definitely need to step back from stuff and breathe.
Thanks for watching, Sneak Peekers. If you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe down below and check our videos right here.